Welcome to Podfic Galore. I'm your horrible online reader, Goldskype. I read out loud fanfictions for you busy bees, free of charge and no strings attached. Today I will continue reading the Silmarillion fic by Aeolian Sands from Archive of Our Own called The Rescue Party, Chapter 6. I hope that you can at least try to enjoy my voice, and I will try my best for you with the equipment available to me. On with the show. The Rescue Party, Chapter 6. Bottled Emotions. Fëanor awoke on the sand somewhat surprised that he was not dead. It seemed as if his old project, dynamite, he was thinking of calling the substance, was more complete than he had thought. True, he had made it to assist with the mining of minerals, but he had no idea that his first prototype would be so powerful. He had assumed that he had quite a bit of work left to make it strong enough to hew rock, and that its current form would be perfect for hollowing out a tree to make a boat. But in actuality, it seemed plenty strong as it was now. Certainly too strong for his log. Groaning, he sat up and got wobbly feet under him, noticing how the wood chips from the explosions did not get within 2 or 3 meter radius of him. How odd. Then he looked across the beach back towards the side of the explosion and saw a tall being with long dark hair petting the 2 horses on their noses. It was certainly not Fingolfin. For one, this man wore no shirt or tunic, although ever the stuffy one tended to be a bit more modest. And for two, he could see Finarfin and Fingolfin themselves stumbling out of the forest. Suddenly alarmed, Fëanor began to run back where the log had once been. He looked across the road to see his brothers running as well. They skid to a stop in the sand before this mysterious stranger, Fëanor ready to demand answers as to who he was, where he came from, and what his business was on this particular beach. He opened his mouth to begin his interrogation, but no words came. Were those scales gleaming on his arms? Osse, Finarfin greeted instead, the first to find his voice. The tall Meyer turned around, and there was joy in his bright blue eyes.
Sons of Finwë, I greet thee,
he proclaimed, nodding at each elf, the sea breeze playing with his wild long hair. Fëanor felt a sudden desire not to be there. He sidestepped for a bit behind Fingolfin. Osse noticed and laughed with a voice clear as the waters.
No need to hide from me, Fëanor. Once I would have had a grievance with you, but I think 4 centuries in Mandos would be enough for one such as yourself. Plus,
and Osse bent his head to be closer to them.
I understand,
he whispered. He then stood up to his full height once more and nodded to the south.
They're chasing you, are they not?
All 3 Noldor went pale.
Huh, I know the feeling. But when I am in your shoes, I try to lie low.
The Lord of Sea Storms declared as he studied the blackened sand around them.
Yet, it seems as if you 3 prefer to signal your position with fire and destruction.
Fingolfin swallowed. Will you help us? He asked, choosing to ignore their comment. Our children are still across the sea, and we wish to return to them. Osse flashed a lopsided grin.
I certainly see no reason why you should stay here in Valinor. You have proven already to be quite a disruption. No, we can't have that. I think, for once in my life, I shall do something in the name of the peaceful tranquility of Aman. I will help. For surely, that is in the best interests of all. But we must hurry. The women will be upon us soon.
The 3 brothers winced. Fëanor did not like this. He did not like it one bit, but even as he tried to convince himself to turn his back on the Maya, he remembered reading Osse's story when he was younger. He might be one of the Ainur, but Osse likely understood their predicament better than most. Desperate times call for desperate measures, Fëanor growled, fighting to find the civility he had lost in Mandos. But do you even have a plan, mighty lord of the seas? I'm all out of dynamite, and Olwe also raised a thick eyebrow.
Olwe is a steadfast friend of mine, and you were fortunate that I did not send you to the depths when he prayed for it. I will not hear ill spoken of one who is in many ways better than us both.
Anger flickered in Fëanor's eyes, and he fought to avoid snapping because Osse had actually made his point for him. Exactly, he ground out between clenched teeth. And since he is so much better, he will not permit to set a foot in his city.
Nor do I think I want you there. But there is more than one way to cross the sea.
Fëanor then had a mental terrible image of being trapped on a small island for half a century with Finarfin and Fingolfin. It was almost enough for him to send a punch into Osse's pale face. I have a boat, Finarfin volunteered. Fëanor bit back a curse at that unwelcome comment.
You have a boat? And yet you were going to sail on a log?
Osse asked, amusement flickering in his eyes. What he's not telling you is that it's a rowboat, Fëanor spat. Nevertheless, I think it is better than swans. Much more subtle. It's an Alqualonde, Fëanor continued to protest.
The Teleri adore me, so it shall not be a problem. I will get Arafinwe's boat for you, but unless you want to be scalped by your wife, you need to follow me.
The Meyer gestured, walking towards the sea. The minute his scaled legs touched the water, the waves began to dance. A tall cresting wave came from nowhere and enveloped his entire body. When the waters dissipated, Fëanor saw that Osse had disappeared. Damn, crazy Meyer! Fëanor mentally cursed as he ran to the waves. He sloshed out to where the sandy bottom fell out beneath him when something strange happened. Instead of floating at the surface, his feet dragged him down, as if there was no buoyancy at all. Perplexed, Fëanor took a few more steps and saw that he could indeed walk on the seabed. But as fascinating as a discovery such as this was, his lungs were fast running out of oxygen, and there was angry water swirling above his head.
Come further down,
Osse's voice sounded in his head.
And don't worry, for now I have made it so you can breathe beneath the waves. Come, tra-la-la-la, as the elves of the Beleriand sing.
And Fëanor realized that the Meyer was having way too much fun with this whole predicament, but nevertheless his curiosity drove him, and he opened his mouth to find that the water was light as air in his lungs, and breathing was indeed very possible. What was more, the salt did not sting his eyes. Grinning, he picked up his pace and ran across the seafloor to where Meyer stood near a large boulder. It was nothing short of fascinating how the water's drag was near non-existent. Like this he could run all the way to Beleriand.
Absolutely not,
Osse spoke again in his mind.
My lord would slay us both if he caught you in the deep. Besides, there are dark creatures at the bottom of the sea unknown to your kind. We shall let them dwell in peace.
He warned out loud this time, his voice clear as he had been on shore. Finarfin and Fingolfin stared at the choppy surf where their brother had disappeared. Well, Fingolfin said, I have endured a lot in the past 2 days. Already I've been to Angamando, Mandos, Tyrion, and now I'm about to follow my brother into the sea. Finarfin nodded. Either my oath to follow him is stronger than I thought, or perhaps I shall wake up in my room at Barat Aethel to find that none of this ever happened. Barat Aethel? It's the keep I ruled from in Beleriand. Do you think he drowned? Unfortunately, one does not get rid of Fëanor that easily. Should we follow? But Finarfin's question was answered for him by the nearby thundering of hooves. Absolutely. And the two of them raced into the waters before the horses and their furious riders could catch the sight of them. As he ran into the waves, Fingolfin did not have the time to be surprised about the broken laws of nature or how he could breathe the salt water. Anaida was coming! Anaida was here! His heart beat more rapidly now than he had had when Morgoth came to face him before the gates of Angband. Finarfin had to have been feeling similar because he ran down the sloping seafloor like a man possessed. The two brothers dove for the undersea boulder that Fëanor was crouched beside. Osse smiled and chanted a few words of a song, and suddenly the three elves could hear the voices through the water. These were their horses! They heard Earwans shout, and the sound of feet hitting the ground followed. Someone was running across the beach. Don't you worry, you two good boys, you're safe now. We won't let them near you again. Finarfin's wife cooed to the animals, and Fingolfin could imagine her giving them comforting pets. So, where are they? And the former High King and Lord of Hithlum wished he were invisible. That was Anaida. That was his sweetheart on a warpath. He was as good as dead. He gripped Finarfin's arm. This clearly is the center of the burning. The sand here is charred. Nerdanel's voice came through the waters. And they clearly didn't run off on their own horses, breaking in a way so uncharacteristic for one who cut shapes out of unyielding stone. Fingolfin felt Fëanor stiffen beside him. Well, they certainly aren't dead. I can still feel Nolo's shielding. Although he feels strangely distant. Fingolfin looked up to see Osse smirking a bit. He must have had something to do with this distance. Do you think they hailed a traveler to take them down the road to Alqualonde? Arwen asked. Well, I don't believe they ran on foot. They may have survived, but they still would have been rather close to the explosion. It is possible that the distance we feel is, well, because they're hurt, Netanel answered. Arwen gasped. No, Anara declared. It cannot be so. I hope you're right, Netanel replied gravely. Check the trees. Make sure they didn't get launched into one of the branches, or worse, thought they could hide there. If we don't find them, then surely they have moved on, and we must as well. A little while later, and Fëanor listened to the sounds of the horses' hoofs fade, Nerdanel and her companions finally deciding to ride on. Osse stood up.
Stay here,
he ordered, as if Fëanor really needed to be told not to go to the city that wanted to flay him alive. The Meyer then bent his legs and exploded upwards in a powerful jump, leaping out of the waves and vanishing into the sky. Fëanor slumped against the boulder, feeling strangely wounded in a small piece of his heart. Was this right? He wanted to get back for the sake of his sons, but Nerdanel... Oh, Nerdanel. How could she still care? And now she thinks I've blown myself to pieces. There was a gentle patting on his head. Frowning at the patronizing gesture, he looked up to see which of his brothers deserved a headbutt to the stomach. To his slight surprise, it was Finarfin. It's too late now, Naro, but they will forgive us. They want to see our sons and daughters again, too. It is hard living without the little ones. They are pieces of our own hearts, after all. No, Ara. Our families will not be whole. Even if we succeed. He spoke quietly, the sea playing with his hair. Whatever do you mean? Fëanor didn't feel like explaining, so he stayed silent. Finarfin's face just lost more and more color as he waited for some sort of answer. Eventually, Fingolfin spoke up. Your sons, Angarato and Aganara, were killed just recently. I have lost my two youngest. Naro, his youngest. Fëanor looked away as he saw his youngest brother tremble. He couldn't deal with this right now. What? My sons? They're gone. But they died as heroes. You should be proud of them. I was very proud of them, Fingolfin continued, and Fëanor shut his eyes. It is all my fault, isn't it? It is because of me that so many have died. He remembered the way Amras had shattered when his twin had burned, and Fëanor's heart swelled with guilt. I killed my son. I burned that ship first. He sat with his back to the boulder and huddled with his knees to his chest. Foolish Nerdanel. I was doing just fine until you came here and spoke like you still cared. It could have been seconds or centuries later, but at some point he felt arms around him. Two pairs of arms around him. He looked up to realize that he was in a group hug. The second of the day. He kissed Ara's head where he had burrowed into his chest. He was not sure how long they stood huddled like that, only that the sun was finally setting far above them and the water became golden in the rays of dusk. And this is the problem with inaction, Fëanor mused as he looked up at the setting sun, marveling for a second the way the waters refracted the light like a perfect jewel. To stop running, to stop doing. That is to give life to these thoughts that chase me. To stop is to break my youngest brother's heart. Fëanor realized then that Ara at some point had fallen asleep in his arms, and he shifted to lay him down. Without speaking, Fingolfin helped him set their youngest sibling down in the warm sand so he could be more comfortable. We are cursed, he whispered to Fingolfin. I've cursed us all. Why are you even here with me? Look at us. We look ridiculous. Standing here beneath the waves miles from any town. Fingolfin shrugged. Because what's the good of brothers if you cannot rely on them to stand with you? And what's the good of fathers if they let you go on alone? Because we are not so different after all. There were moments today where I forgot all the woes of this world, where I felt young again. Fëanor laughed softly. I did too. And I am sure we will have new distractions come morning to help us forget our sins. Perhaps this is a way of healing, but the journey ahead will be long. We should sleep as well. Fëanor nodded and lay down in the sand. Well, this be a slightly new experience, he mumbled to himself as he lay looking at the waves above him and the starlight that filtered through the water's surface. End of chapter 6. Stay tuned.